This is Jonathan Herps, founder and CEO of Scale Up Growth Partners. Welcome to our Stories of Scaling Up series, where we're chatting with owners, managing directors, founders, and business leaders of scaling companies. It centres around their entrepreneurial journey so far and their aspirations for their companies. Today, I'm speaking with Rod Lewis, founding director and CEO of Extracta. Welcome, Rod.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for taking the time.
Great pleasure.
So tell me, what does Extracta do, and a bit of background behind it, and how long have you been doing it?
Yeah, sure. So Extracta is a business we started about just at the beginning of the pandemic, as it happens. It was August 20. It's a business that creates value by recovering unused food and agricultural surplus. Other people's waste is my goal. And we convert that into natural ingredients used by the nutraceutical, cosmetic, and food industries. We understand the technology. We understand there's a massive amount of waste out there. And so when we started it, my partner and I, who's a technical fella, we were up in Bundaberg about 8 years ago now, and noting the massive amount of citrus in particular, but all sorts of fruit just thrown away, just wasted for various reasons. Sometimes they're slightly split, and while from a nutrition point of view they're 100%, Coles and Woolies won't accept them. And there's other hail damage, all sorts of problems cause farmers to not be able to sell their crop or part of their crop, which is why we call it unused or surplus. But that's our goal. We get it fresh. Usually we get it for nothing or for very little, because they've got to throw it away. We pay cartage. Avoids them the cost of that. It avoids a landfill. But we get it fresh. And literally the nutraceuticals we make from those fresh wasted fruit are the highest possible nutrient value, because they haven't had to sit around. Literally, our products have got more nutrients than an apple and an orange looking fresh, sitting in Woolies shelves. Literally, ours has got more nutrients in it because we get it and process it fresh. And that point has seemed to have been lost on the industry. People understand it, but it hasn't been exploited or taken advantage of.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, being a not so closet greeting, congratulations. But can I explore that a bit? So you're talking about apples there. Do you combine fresh produce with apples with pears, or apples with how did that work?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And the answer is yes, and hopefully. We're processing citrus peels. We're not doing citrus peels right now, but citrus peels, we're about to. Apple pomace, which is what's left from an apple processor after they've taken what they want, and there's what's left is called pomace. It's the waste. We can use it. And in the pomace, and in the same with pear, there's very high quality soluble, mostly dietary fibre. So we are thinking of combining them into a combination dietary fibre product. Dietary fibre is A, essential, B, understood to be essential by both the medical world, but more importantly the consumers and the public. And we think there's a position to combine apple, pear, and there's some in oranges for that matter, but also sugarcane bagasse. So we haven't done that. I've got a lady has just come on recently. She's exploring the selling opportunities with those sorts of ideas. But we will be using citrus, for example, primarily to make pectin. We'll be using apple primarily for dietary fibre, maybe a bit of pectin as well. And we'll be using grape marc, which is what's left after the winery squeeze the juice. And what they don't use for winemaking, we take and recover the nutrients.
So you've got a factory somewhere. Explain what the business looks like to me.
So one of the cost problems with a business like this, why it took us a while to think it through, is Oranges are grown, for example, in Berry, as we know, and up in some of the northern, but north in Bundaberg. Apples are grown in different parts of the world, including, Tasmania. We're not going to go there. Sugarcane's grown through far north Queensland down to north New South Wales. All of them are really good ingredients for us, and there's others. But of course, we don't want to have factories everywhere. But also we want to process it really fresh, because that's where our main value is. So we're at the moment creating a plant which is actually quite small, sit on the back of a Pantec in a truck, and it's movable. Yep. We had one of these in the US, in Tennessee, with a good friend of mine built it. And it was the processing equipment is not all that cumbersome and can go on the back of a truck. And depending on volume, maybe 2 trucks. So we do want to get we want to be at the location during the season for that commodity. For example, we're quite focused on grape mark and grape product. There's a lot of commercial value in them. And there's a lot of it thrown away, literally thrown onto the field and not used. So we've started building a small plant. It's a factoryette, really, at near Orange, at a partner's winery. We're building a factoryette, and literally it's just a slab with a shed on, up in Tweed Heads. That's near one of our other raw material suppliers. That one happens to be a bagasse supplier. We're going to start with those 2 and then decide either we'll move the factory around on the back of a truck, which is practical. We've done it. But my personal preference would be to have part processing of those, and once you've condensed it down into a dry mass that's dense and therefore cheaper to freight, then freight it to a central processor. We haven't got to, we won't get to that until we've been processing about 5 different raw materials.
Okay. So tell me, who is your core customer? Who do you sell this to?
Several of them. Our biggest single customer is another business within our group, and that takes sugarcane dietary fibre, that takes pectin, which is also dietary fibre, and that'll take the red and white grape mark, or the nutrients that come out of that. So that's a tied customer. It's a signed contract. Others are large companies that make food products, and they want the nutrients. Obviously, as we all know, resveratrol is a component of red grape, and we can extract that. We can sell that. Pectin is used by dozens of large and small companies, pardon me, and a few massive companies here in New Zealand. I'm sure it's used by more than that. We've only got a dozen on our books at the moment. And they use it for making jam. Now, pectin has got many uses. One is jam, which is the normal use everyone understands, but there is a different grade of pectin that's used in pharmaceuticals as a carrier for drugs in capsules. It's good because it's a very highly safe, natural, no side effects, nutritious powder. It's bland to the taste, and it's happily carries drugs. So that's an application. We haven't got into that yet, but it is an application for a higher grade, higher margin product. Right. So, and in terms of the customer answer, the lady I've just invited to join us, she's got a lot of experience in marketing skin health products, which we're now going into, and her background is figuring out paths to market for retail products to go either direct to some retail outlets, e.g. in the wine regions. They've all got a lot of retail product to sell there, and I say a lot in for their volumes, but enough for us to have a nice trickle of an income. It'll never make us $1 million. But therefore, once we've figured that out, we've got track records in smaller retail outlets, then we can go to the larger retail outlets nationally. But larger outlets want to know how the product's tracking at retail in other areas. So that'll be a mid next year approach. But she's figuring out those path to market, pricing, competitive products, etc.
Okay, thank you. So my next question, applies to you, but in a different way, I think. So of all the actions you've taken because of the pandemic, and I note that you started in the pandemic. What are some of the actions that you took that will remain part of your business going forward?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. No one else had asked me that, and when you sent me that question, I've massively value the Zoom communication, and I'm going to keep that in, as I'm sure most will. I mean, I was thinking about this. I would travel to. I'm in northern, Sydney, Chatswood area. And I'll often go to the city for meetings. Now, that takes me a morning to get to and from the city effectively. If I go to Melbourne, it's a day, or Brisbane, it's a day. And on many of the meetings you go to, you're not sure the real value you're going to deliver to the business. But you go because that's what you do. And, of course, with Zoom now, you can spend 1 hour, a bit of time preparing, 1 hour at a meeting and a bit of time debriefing, and you know whether there's value, and you can do another one every day, and it's really time efficient. So we're now very focused on Zoom meetings. The commercial world is accepting Zoom meetings. When it first came in, it was difficult because you're used to the face-to-face and the chit-chat over the water cooler. That's gone, I think, to a large degree. There's value in the chit-chat, don't get me wrong, but the obsession with having to meet physically, I think, we've all gone beyond that. So I find that probably a huge benefit in terms of time management and pumping as much value into each hour of the day that I can. And the other thing, separately to that, because we were home, I get sick of sitting here in the office, so I go out and I go for a run, and I might or walk. I might, if I'm going a long way, I walk. I might do 8 or 10 kilometres. And interestingly enough, I did it because I wanted to get out and get some exercise. But I find that in terms of quality time thinking, that is much better than sitting at the desk. Much better. So I'm doing that every day now. And it's obviously good health-wise, and we're in a health business, so that it's I should do that anyway to demonstrate. But it's a much better quality of thinking time and planning, and you can take calls, and so I'm that's saying in the business. And the other thing I'm doing more, not because of the pandemic, I suppose, but because I've reassessed the way I lead the business. I'm spending much less time doing things, and I'm spending much more time making sure that all the important things get done. And it was, we all know spend more time on the business than in the business. We've heard those words, but I think I've made a significant shift towards actually doing that. The business is better, I'm better, and the relationship with the team members is better. They're clearer because I'm not doing stuff and I'm holding them accountable. They're doing it, and it's working well.
It's interesting to say that. I've got, it's not a large team. I've got, we get together. We try and get together, at least the New South Wales-based group, at least once every 2 months, maybe.
Yep.
And I've got, I'm in the Southern Highlands and Barrel, outside of Sydney, but I've got my content managers in the Southern Highlands, my sales managers in Wollongong, my CRM guy is in the Sunshine Coast, my VAs in the Philippines, of the 12 in the team, we're all over the place. And the other thing, which backs up what you're saying, with the pandemic, we were looking to move back to Sydney. As it turned out, luckily we didn't, because we ended 5,000 square metre block of land, and I've got 2 8-year-olds. So having the room for them to run around was fabulous. But I ended up buying a house next door, and so my commute now is I literally climb over the fence on the way into the office. The downside of that is a lot of the learning I used to do, podcasts, etc., or audiobooks. Unlike you, I've had to reinvent the way I.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me, what does the future look like, and what do you see as the main challenges going forward?
Okay, we're pretty optimistic about the future. We've had going back. I've had a lot of experience with small businesses, and one of the things you manage is the cash flow and raising capital to help you get to that first or second hurdle. And with this business, the cap raising experience and the partnering experience is completely different, which is a great delight. We offer sustainability. We're bringing a lost manufacturing industry back into the country. We are developing it. We've got technology for highly nutritious, natural ingredients that are free of side effects. Those are big draw cards, not just to industrial people, but to consumers. And we go to a lot of trade shows and we talk about it, overwhelmed with the support we're getting. And so we're really optimistic about the future. We know we've got sales locked away, some under contract and some under a handshake, which are good handshakes for next year, enough to get us to the cash positive point of view at least. And we're starting to produce, hopefully this month, but it's probably next month. And that's depend on the rain, to be honest. So that's exciting anyway. We've developed some partnerships, signed some long-term deals with a number of logistics and other partners. We're just so excited that what we're doing resonated with so many people. I mean, I've been around a long time, and it really gives you a charge when you go to a trade show, tell people what you're doing, and you can see their visible interest and enthusiasm and congratulations and wow, I haven't had that in many businesses.
Well, and interesting that's how I started the conversation with you. I was excited. I think done a quick review of what you're doing because it's good positive news.
Yes, yeah, it is, and our aspirations for the future, extend to all sorts of things. But I'm the one to let's do only one thing and let's do it really well, and then take on number two. My partner's got the expansive brain.
Well, and of course, that's one of the key learnings of being a successful leader is, and Steve Jobs probably said it the best that I've seen, that he was as proud of what Apple didn't do as he was of what they did do.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Getting that focus. And if I may, look, I'm an avid reader. That's part of my job as being a teacher. And I stumbled on this book the other day. It's called The CEO Only Does Three Things. Finding your focus in the C-suite. And this is by a guy called Trey Taylor. And, you've actually highlighted these three things today already: culture, people, and numbers. Our culture includes strategy, but it's also the execution culture. It's how the business operates. People, obviously, getting the right people on the bus, doing the right things, and numbers. And you nailed it just a moment ago. It's about do we have the cash to achieve what we need to achieve? Yeah. And if the CEO is focused on those three things, and bringing in a principle I coach called Who Not How. The first thing you need to do, which you've talked about already, is finding the right who's. They're the elements, I think, of a successful CEO.
Well, at the time, my shareholders are still wondering whether I'm going to be successful as they want, but...
so tell me, what's your biggest learning, do you think, since you've been a business owner?
The first priority is the team. Everyone says, well, not everyone, but many people say customer, and they are critically important. But if you don't have a happy, motivated team, then you won't have a happy customers. So certainly, first priority is the team. And at times, and you can be really strong with them, and you can disappoint them, and you can do all sorts of things they don't want, as long as you're fair and consistent and always show that you value them. I mean, I'm a gregarious person, and I like people, and I like spruiking, as you can tell me, and that's helpful when you're in a leadership role, because you can talk to you naturally talk to people. Hopefully what you say is useful, but you've got to be confident enough to go out and talk to people one-on-one or in a group. You've got to be able to do it impromptu. So I just get reinforced. The thing that my job is to make sure the team are happy and focused and going in the one direction. And if that's happening, everything else will fall into place. If it doesn't, then I'll get back and fix it.
That's great.
And the other thing I've learned, since I've been in business, since I was a senior exec in corporates, you have to let people do things that you don't really agree with 100%. If what they're doing is okay and it'll sort of get you there, but the other option is say, no, don't do that, do it this way, and their initiative's gone, and tomorrow they'll have no initiative to do the next thing. So accepting that they've their own way, it may not be the best way always, certainly in my opinion, but it's their way, and having them do their way is more important.
So tell me, sorry.
Yeah, I've got one more, and this one I've thought a lot about for over a long time. What does it take to be a successful founder and therefore CEO of a startup? And I've known a lot of them. I've coached a lot of others, and the vast majority of them fail one way or another. Fail is an interesting word. Don't achieve the objectives they originally set out to because things change along the way. Fail if you're a shareholder. And so, in my opinion, the biggest single characteristic that a founder and CEO needs for a small business that's got to grow is emotional stability. You've got to be able to be hit in the guts dramatically on one day and not take it to heart over much. Learn from it, hopefully, but don't be depressed by it. And tomorrow, come back exactly the same as you were yesterday, confident, determined, strong. Learn from it, but you can't be overly confident it wins, because tomorrow you'll get a hit in the guts, and you've got to be able to recover quickly. Second thing, I'm lucky enough to have a great relationship with my lady, and I think personal support, friends and family, it gets tough at times. It gets really tough. And having someone just to, cuddle you and have a glass of scotch with you and say, let's talk about something else is massively important. The other one, and again, I've thought about this quite a lot. So many people that I've worked with, there's opportunities staring them in the face, but they don't take them for one of two reasons. They don't see them, or they're nervous. Oh, we don't have the money. It's too early. We're not ready. But the opportunity is then gone forever.
Yeah.
So the ability to figure out which opportunities you must take, and you've got to figure out how to do it and fund it, and how do you take advantage. And all of that means you've got to be fair bit of self-belief without your ego going crazy, but you do need a strong ego, and you've got to just persist. Just keep at it.
And great pieces of advice. Thank you. So tell me, when you think about the word successful, who comes to mind first and why?
It's an interesting question. I'm a pilot, so I gravitate towards pilots. Dick Smith is a gentleman that I think is not just because he made a lot of money. A lot of successful people are successful in many, many ways. He made a lot of money. But the thing that grabs me about Dick is he started on something silly, with his propeller head, and it was something he loved. He saw an opportunity, but we've all know him to a degree because his personality is out there. He's a pilot. I'm a pilot, and I've run into him. But he just decided he wanted to do this, and he did it with massive passion and good humour, and surrounded himself with really good people. And he did it. and it got there and it grew. And then secondly, he then grew it up to a point that it was a very successful in every measure, in my opinion, and exited. Exits are something us founders focus on. They're hard to do well, but he did a very, very nice exit. And then on top of that, his passion is a number of things, as you know. He became chair of CASA, the aviation, and made some significant changes there. Completely different focus, but he loved and indeed loves aviation. He's got a Citation jet, and he's a very skilled pilot. And of course, he flew the helicopter around the world, and he's done such a lot of other things, non-business things that he was passionate about, and he decided to put the time and the effort in and the mindset to do them and do them successfully. So I take my hat off to Mr. Smith.
Do you know, I've met Dick as well. I met him in a very different
environment.
I was chairing a fundraising committee for the War Memorial and the Australian Maritime Museum to raise money to restore a Second World War actually Japanese fishing boat that a unit called Z Special did a raid on Singapore Harbour.
Okay.
And my father was a member of that unit, and it was one of those deathbed wishes. Son, go and find the money. So I met with Dick a couple of times, and he was really passionate about what we were doing. But in the end, he declined to invest, and his reasoning was phenomenal. You know, he has a foundation which is he and his wife have a significant foundation where they invest in causes. And what I was asking him to do was go away from the purpose of the foundation, and it was young children's welfare. And he really agonised over it, but in the end said no. But I really appreciated not only the time, the thought he put into it, but also then the introductions he gave me.
Right.
An impressive man.
Yeah, indeed.
So, are you a reader? Do you have any books?
I read aviation magazines. Look, I'm a reader from time to time. I read. I'm fascinated because I'm a pilot. I became interested in reading about aeroplanes, which led me to aeroplane development, which was the Second World War, First World War, Second World War. So I then defaulted into being interested in that. So I've read a heap of books about achievements in the air, often with bomber pilots or fighter pilots. And I've read dozens and dozens of them. And some of the, I typically read the books, most of them published by the heroes of either the Australian, English, American side or the others. And my favourite book is The Others, the gentleman that led the Luftwaffe as a fighter pilot. And you could feel, again, a bit like we've said about Dick Smith. This guy was passionate, and he was passionate about the fight, but also about fighting ethically. And the same as many of the British leading aces. They've all written books. And I try and read into books, what would I do in that situation, particularly in a leadership role. So that's one. In terms of business, the book that made this may sound odd because some might argue it's a trivial book, but The 1 Minute Manager, I read many, many years ago. And I read it. It's only a 10-minute read. It's it's short and thin, and there's been sequels, The Monkey and stuff. But that resonated because it's all about not wasting time. Focus, get it done. Very much. The other, and I still flick back to that to focusing because I'm a bit of a time waster sometimes, and it's nice to be reminded that you get a lot done. The other thing about The 1 Minute Manager that grabbed me was one of the corollary books was that you get a 1 minute or less to make an impression on somebody. And if that somebody is a customer, then you better get it right the first time or you'll never have that person as a customer. So I focus a lot when I'm with consumers at trade shows or even in the supermarket. I accost people and talk to them about products. And if you get it down that you can make a positive, respectful impression in the first 30 seconds or a minute, they'll talk to you forever. It's and I've even been able to sell products in the supermarket because people want to talk to you. So,
I like the way you referred even the military books back to, as a leader, what would you do? It was interesting. Lots of my little reminiscences today, and we should have a conversation about this man later on. I was the aide-de-camp to the Governor of New South Wales, Sir James Rowland, from 86 to 8. And two things come out of that. He was a Lancaster pilot in the Second World War, a Pathfinder, and then became a master bomber, which, for anybody that doesn't know, once the bombs were putting out the flares the Pathfinders had put in, he used to dive underneath and remark the targets. Awarded the DFC and the AFC. Extraordinary man. And he went on to become an engineer in the Australian Air Force and eventually the Chief of the Air Staff and my governor. And some of the stories, he never wrote a book. I wish he had. About leadership and just people were just extraordinary. And it was then that my second anecdote was I met the Queen a couple of times, and I never, it's a topical time. I never forget 5th of May 1988, opening of Darling Harbour. And I was there with the governor in the uniform and all the gold braid and, over there. And the Queen literally made a beeline straight across the room to me.
Really?
And essentially, who are you? What are you doing here? And et cetera. And the governor said to her, because we were both stumped for words, it's Jonathan's birthday today. And I'll never forget. She said to me, "We should be at home with your family." It's like, ma'am, you're the entire reason of my existence, this part of my life. Yeah. And that evening there was a state dinner on board Britannia, and I was invited and was given 5 minutes, sat down with her, and she talked to me about rugby and sailing. So all these stories we're hearing about the Queen as a leader and her empathy, I saw that in spades.
Yes. That's great experience. That'd be
we should talk about Sir James Rowland. He was an extraordinary man. Any last piece of advice? So I'm sorry, I've just taken over the interview a bit. Any last pieces of advice or parting words for CEOs or aspiring CEOs?
Look, a few things. Obtain independent advice. I'm talking to a gentleman who consults, so that's timely, but I think it's critical. And as I said earlier, I've got some deep skills that I won't bore you with what they are, but are things I know really well. I've done all my career and I've been promoted from one to the other, so I must be good at it. But, of course, most of the things you need in a business I'm not deeply skilled in because I haven't done it. And so when it's in an area that I know backwards, I don't take much advice. In fact, I used to give advice. So my ears are closed on things that I've done for 20 years or more. But on the areas that I don't have personal experience in, I take advice all the time. And I think the biggest single thing is listen. And one of my approaches is, for example, in one area that I'm knowledgeable in, but I've never been responsible for a marketing budget. So therefore, I don't have the feel for it as experienced marketers do. So if it's an area that I don't have deep experience and knowledge in, I always get two advisors rather than one, because you want, from time to time, you want them to disagree respectfully and come up with a very good argument or arguments to figure out what you're actually going to do. And you'll learn something and you'll hopefully get the best answer. So that's the biggest single thing. Obviously, listen to the team, but listen to your customers. If you want to sell anything to anyone, you've got to understand who they are, where they are, what they want, and what their obsessions are.
Okay. Rod, thank you so much. I really enjoyed the conversation.
I did too.
I'm really looking forward to getting you back again to talk about your other company, because the thing that I picked up here is I'm not sure which way around it happened, but Extracta is obviously there as part of the vertical integration of your other companies. I'd be fascinated to talk to you about that another time.
Sure, be delighted to.
Great. Thanks again.
Thank you very much. Cheers.